Hello, hello. Welcome to the Kick-Ass Stepmom podcast. And Kick-Ass Stepmom does not mean that I'm saying we are, or I am, the perfect stepmom with all the answers. This podcast is just about finding a way to live a kick-ass life amongst the extra stress and challenges that come with being a stepmom. It's about doing the work to thrive amongst the, BS or whatever it is, however you want to word it. And it's not just for stepmoms, it's for anyone. We have a lot of non-stepmom listeners. A lot of episodes have nothing to do with stepmom life. We are just here trying to do things the best that we can and thrive amongst the tough stuff. So in this episode, actually, it's not with a stepmom, it's with a mom of three. Ashley Machele, you know her from probably our Splendid Life on Instagram. And she was actually the sixth guest on the podcast back in 2018, which is just crazy. So if you haven't been with us since the beginning, I recommend going back and listening to that podcast episode. We talked about Ashley's decision to give up primary residency of her daughter and let her daughter go live with her father and stepmom. We also touch on parental alienation, how she dealt with this in her own co-parenting relationship. She shares how and why parallel parenting works for her family dynamic. And then in this episode, we get an update on how the long distance co-parenting relationship is going. Ashley lives in New York with her husband and three other children, and her daughter lives in Florida. So there is a plane ride between them. And we get an update on just her perspective on parenting now and what that relationship with her daughter looks like and what she's striving for. We dive into the challenges that come with a long distance co-parenting relationship, ego, and how she's taken that out of the equation and really focused on what's best for her daughter, the power of really understanding your children, and how she uses the love languages to foster her relationship. Ashley and I also dive into social media and the struggle that comes with sharing your life and perspective online when there are other players in the game with very different perspectives. Remember, two different people can experience the exact same situation in two very different ways. But yeah, this is a really great conversation with Ashley. I am so excited that she is back on the show. And yeah, after the episode, if you want to do a deep dive into what we talked about, come on over to the forum of the exclusive stepmom community, which is my membership space for stepmoms entirely off of social media. We're going to chat about it. We're going to chat about what resonated, what didn't. I'm going to share my thoughts on Ashley's growth and perspective on parenting. And I just want to take these conversations to the next level. Members, I will see you in there. And if you're not a member and thinking about joining, www.jamiescrimger.com/membership. I just love connecting with you guys in there. Lastly, be sure to follow Ashley on Instagram at Our Splendid Life. Tag us in a post while you're listening. Let us know your biggest take home. Share this episode with a friend. We love hearing from you. Again, Ashley is at Our Splendid Life, and I am at Jamie Scrimger. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Kick-Ass Stepmom podcast. I'm Jamie Scrimger, wife, mom, stepmom, life coach, conversation opener, and BS caller. 7 years ago, I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor with a glass of wine, bawling my eyes out, wondering what the heck I was thinking, marrying a man with 3 kids and an ex-wife. Don't get me wrong, I was madly in love, the kids were great, but as a 26-year-old with zero experience in the parenting department, I was in over my head. When I went to the internet for support, I was disappointed with what I found. So I decided to create the type of support that I was looking for. Raw and real conversations about all things motherhood, stepmotherhood, and living a kick-ass life. Life can be hard, really freaking hard. But each week I'll bring you tips and strategies and mindset shifts to help you thrive amongst the tough stuff in life. My goal is to inspire you to live your version of a kick-ass life. We'll bring you along as I create my own. Let's do this. Ashley, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Hi, thank you so much for letting me be here.
I am so excited. You know, I've been thinking about getting you on the podcast for a while because we did our first episode together. How long ago was that?
It was a long time ago.
Probably a year and a half, maybe even, I don't even know how long I've been doing this. I just feel like life is just kind of like all blurry at this point. But yeah, so we had our first episode where we just kind of talked about you and your co-parenting situation and your life and all the things you got going on. So guys, if you didn't listen to that episode, I highly recommend going back and just kind of getting the lowdown. But maybe, I guess to start, do you want to kind of introduce yourself and give us a brief summary? Maybe not as detailed as the last episode, but.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I would love to. And I feel like we all like this concept of time and co-parenting is just like such a weird thing, and things change so quickly too in a lot of situations. And so quick update on like what we've got going on, because I feel like the last time we talked, we were really new to the my daughter had just decided to live with her dad, and we were kind of going through that almost temporary situation where we weren't sure how long she was going to be there and that kind of stuff. So to give a little backstory about who I am, I have a daughter who I share custody with, and I actually in court have joint custody still, but she lived with us and we had full like she was living with us full time until she decided to live with her dad when she was about 8. So she's 13 now. So that was about 5 years ago. And since then we've had, well, even just all along the whole process, we definitely had a high conflict custody situation, struggled a lot with parental alienation. And so I've kind of going down that road and understanding what that looks like has been a learning process. And I feel like even just evolving on a day-to-day basis, it changes. And so I love that right now we're in a really good place. And so speaking to that from the perspective of going through the hard stuff and knowing what that feels like, but then also knowing what the peace feels like on the other end of it and being able to, let go of expectations and set boundaries and do all of the things and kind of work through. And one of the biggest things that I'm most passionate about talking about is working past the symptoms and going into really like the root cause and the limiting beliefs of what we've got going on in our lives right now. So that's kind of where I'm at, what we've got going on over here. And
so how far are you guys apart in turn? It's a plane ride, right?
Oh yeah. So at the time she decided to live with her dad, we were living in Idaho, and then we just recently moved to New York. So she's in Florida. So either way, we've always had a really long distance situation. So.
Oh, how was that during COVID?
It was crazy, but we got really lucky. And I just kind of intuitively timed plane tickets for it to not impact us as much as I think it did most people. So we got really lucky with that. But also as she's gotten older and she's a teenager now. So we've seen that that's changed our visitation as well. So not saying that it was COVID related, but it's definitely, changed since COVID, I guess.
Yeah. So I have so many questions, but first, what is your schedule now in terms of like, how do you guys see each other? Because, I know when I talk to stepmoms who have the, long distance co-parenting situation, so they'll typically have summers or holidays or just more extended periods of time. But, as we were talking about before we hopped on, kids get older and they don't really want to hang out with the parents that they live with, let alone pack their bags and go and spend summers where they don't have friends or they don't have their sports or they don't have like things that are going on in their lives. So how have you guys navigated that?
Yeah. So this is actually our first summer that she hasn't come to stay with us for the full time. And part of the reason for that was she came out last summer and we saw a lot of issues with just not even just behavior, but with just her being happy, and we want her to have a community and we want her to facilitate a network here for her so that she feels like this is her second home. But realistically, we know that sometimes that's not possible. And so this summer was the first year that she basically just said, I don't want to come out, and respecting that for her, to me, was more important than forcing her to do something that she didn't want to do at this point in time. And I also understand and realize that a lot of the dynamic with our relationship right now is based on a history and a foundation of parental alienation. And so we're still seeing the results of that as she gets older. And so she is making those decisions for herself, but also understanding the backstory of, knowing that manipulation has happened. So, but as a mom, the thing that the most important thing to me is my relationship with her moving forward, that I am preserving as much as I can and knowing that I am kind of playing the long game. I'm not going to be short-sighted and force her to do something that she doesn't want to do, because those aren't going to create lasting memories for her that she appreciates and that she doesn't feel seen and heard and loved. And that's all I want. My end goal is for her to be happy. And so understanding that means that I'm not going to get her as much maybe right now in this season. But when I do see her, it's going to be really intentional and very authentic. And so a lot of the time that looks like me flying to go see her and getting a hotel or an Airbnb and, kind of, taking the time to really be in her space and knowing her for who she is and allowing that to be our dynamic rather than saying, I'm going to uproot you for the whole summer, come to our house. And, as much as we've tried to introduce her to friends here and get her in summer camp and do all of those things, it's just not the same, and as a 13-year-old, I can totally understand that. And I would rather put the ball in her court and allow her to feel like she's in control of her life, because I think as a blended kid, you don't get that a lot. And so not only that, but I think we're all doing things the best that we can. And so if she maybe someday looks back, and I know for sure I have regrets on the past, but I also know that my heart has always been in the place where I want what's best for her. And I feel like that is more important than maybe, saying that this is my time and I deserve it and she has to come out here no matter what.
I love that. And I think that's so big of you. Obviously, you've had to check your ego on that, right? And it's so easy for parents to say, well, it's my time. I have court ordered time. I'm entitled to this time with my child. And it goes back to, I share this quote every now and again on Instagram. It's like, you have to remember, children are people. They're not a timeshare, right? Like they have lives and wishes and we want them to be happy. And it's not about just kind of like getting your time scheduled in. You don't want them to look back on their life and resent the time they had with you, because then they're not going to want to be around. Right? Like they're not going to want to come see you when they're in their 20s. They're going to be like, I freaking hated going to my mom's or hated going to my dad's.
Yeah.
You don't want them to feel that. So I think that's so big of you. And I can imagine that's taken a lot of work for you to get to that place.
It definitely has, but also it was a mindset shift. So as soon as you make that, it's like as soon as you make that conscious effort to have the awareness, it's really quick. So I think I struggled with it for a long time, but as soon as I decided that it was going to be about that, it was a really fast transition. So it hasn't been as hard on me because my outcome is different. Like my goal with her is different. So I see my time with her, it's quality over quantity. So if I go see her for a week, then I know that to me, that is my outcome. That is my best case scenario, is that I got to spend a week with her that was amazing and wonderful and we bonded and it was great. And yeah, of course, there are going to be things in that week that we also struggle with. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but knowing that to me was a better option for our family than having her for, 8 weeks in the summer where it might be here and there, hit or miss. We have great moments, but we also have a lot of the hard stuff too. And it's changed our relationship as far as the dynamic between me being her mom, like a full-time mom to her. And I think that in any co-parenting situation, you have so many people that love your child that you have to really step back. And that's when I think about ego, I think about that the most, because I feel like the one thing that I hold on to maybe a little is just the mom guilt and feeling like I should be her mother and I should be raising her and I should have all of this say over her and I should have more. And so we do parallel parenting basically. So what that means, if you haven't heard what parallel parenting is, basically co-parenting is like you're on a path with the other parent and you're like two cars driving down the road and you guys are like in and out of each other's lanes all the time. So you're talking all the time, you're communicating all the time, you're making joint decisions. That's co-parenting. And parallel parenting is you're still driving down the same road. You still want what's best for your kid. You're driving to the same goal. You want to go to the same destination, but your lanes aren't crossing. So I'm staying in my lane and he's staying in his lane and we are doing whatever we want in our homes. And there's not a lot of back and forth. And that works for me because we do have a high conflict situation. And so it's given us both a lot of peace of mind knowing that their parenting style is totally different than mine. And she gets away with a lot that I wouldn't let her get away with. And, but to me, I know that I've also had to understand that she has two parents over there that love her so much. And as long as she's ending up in the same place and our goal is the same, I can't micromanage that. And I can't control that because I think blended kids grow up really fast too. And so thinking about when I was a new mom, I wanted to control everything for my kids. Like I wanted to, be involved in everything and understand, like I wanted to be in all of these different intricate aspects of her life and really, kind of like a hover parent and really just kind of control all of that so that she didn't make mistakes and didn't learn the hard way. But kids go through that eventually anyway, right? Like they move out, whether they're 18 or whether, they're, 16 and starting to become more independent. And so if that's going to happen either way, I would rather preserve a relationship than to fight with her about that and just allow her to exercise that independence a little bit sooner, but also knowing that she's still under their watch and she's still under my watch. And just my role now as a mom is more of, loving and unconditional love and always holding space for her and, doing everything that I can in a way that still allows me to not force her or control her. So that's just what works for us.
Yeah. And I think in some way that works for a lot of families, and where a lot of families would see how much that does work, right? Because I think sometimes we get caught up saying like, this is how it should be, or this is what parenting should look like, or this is what a role of a stepmom should look like, or this is what I should be as a mom. And they're people. Like they're people with desires and goals, and they want to feel like they have some say over their lives. And you're right. At the end of the day, it's about having that relationship. It's about them knowing that they're loved and that they're safe and that they're supported. And that's what makes you a really good parent.
Totally. I agree. I love that. And I think that when I talk to some people and I tell them our situation, I think it triggers a lot of people. And I think that that's almost a good thing, because if you're listening to this and you're saying, I would never put myself in that situation, or you're feeling those emotions come up where, you're seeing that there's a disconnect there. But I feel like it almost, to me, means that we have to take a step back and really look into those patterns that we're playing out in our own lives, right? Because I think that we all have similarities in this situation where that's more valuable. And I feel like, especially when we're all in it together, right? Like we are all struggling with different things and we all have different ways of going about that. But I do think that there's no space for judgment in the step family community.
No, because there's no one size fits all approach. And I say that all the time. And I know we all say that, because you can read these rules, or a stepmom should do this, or a mom should do that, or it needs to be like it doesn't work like that, because there are so many moving parts and different personalities and different perspectives and different histories. People have different ways of even thinking that parents should be. It's way more complicated than that. Now, I want to go back to something that you said. You said you are now about not treating the symptoms. You're about playing the long game. Can you share a little bit more about that when you're talking about the symptoms and what that means for you?
Totally. Yeah. So for me, when I think of a symptom, and just totally in general terms, if you think about something that you're struggling with, like let's say it's anxiety, or let's say it's every time you talk to your ex, you feel so stressed out that then you're going to go and you have emotional eating issues, or you have I'm like addicted to shopping. So I will go anytime that I'm stressed out, or anytime I drop my daughter off and it's like not a great drop off, I will literally run to the mall and go spend money. And that's like my coping mechanism. Right. And so these are all things that to me show up as symptoms. And I think that logic tells us that we should only be working on this surface level stuff. Right. So for example, if my symptom is shopping, then I should have a budget. Or if my symptom is emotional eating, then I should go on a diet, or I should work out, or all of these things that are very surface level, when really, if you think about it, the reason why I was shopping, or the reason why I was eating, or the reason why I was yelling at my ex is because I was feeling an emotion. And basically, your emotions are all attached to experiences from your childhood back, when your subconscious beliefs were programming between the ages of 0 to 7. And so we have emotions that then come up. And I believe divorce is a symptom. I think that we see this generationally. I think that we see this as a symptom of issues that we don't really look any further than surface level on a lot of the things, but knowing that that's the only thing we can control. Like we can't always control our, our circumstances, but we can control our reaction. Well, the question there though is, how sustainable is it if we're only trying to skim the surface? And if we're only trying to just fix those things, instead of really pulling back those layers and saying, okay, well, the emotion that I feel every time I talk to my ex is anger. Well, when was the first time I felt anger? When was the first time that I felt like I was completely out of control in my life? What age was that for you? And for me, I could say it goes back to age 3 or 4. And I can think of a specific example of when my subconscious mind basically programmed this belief that anger means that you are not safe. It means that you're not in control. It means that, and so that experience for me, well, then every time that pattern comes up, every time you feel anger, you're going to go back into this fight or flight mode, right? And so then that response then turns into the symptom that we see. So it's almost like doing the work and doing that healing has been, it's a lot to take in, I think, at first, but I know that like watching how quickly things shift in your life and how I'm able to now move through that with the awareness, I can change that. And to me, I think that that's probably the biggest, like the best thing that I could teach anybody is teaching them how to actually change the things that they want to change without, I mean, obviously in your situation, there are things that you literally can't change, but you can always change how you react.
Yeah, for sure. And just diving back and saying like, why does this affect me the way that it does? Like, why do I get triggered so intensely? And I love that you're talking about just kind of going back into your childhood and like thinking about the messaging that you were given or just those traumatic experiences or where insecurities even come from or where the dynamics in our relationships come from. Because I've been doing a lot of diving back into that kind of, I would say over the last like few years. But again, I really dove into it during COVID, pandemic, you decide to dive into your childhood trauma. It's really good timing for that. But it explains so much. And I think that, and I've talked about this on a couple different podcast episodes, I think people get caught up saying like, no, let's just move forward. You can't fully move forward until you look back and figure out like why things affect you the way that they do. And when you do that, it's such a game changer. And I think it's especially important in blended families for some reason. Like I think there's just so many triggers around us all the time and like so many opportunities to feel wounded or like the victim or like someone's doing something to, it's easy to take things personally. And when you go back, you realize, oh, wow, I got some stuff to work through.
Exactly. Right. And I think no matter what, we're put in these situations so that we can learn from them and so that we can grow from them and we can heal them. And so then we don't have to keep struggling with them. Right. Like, so the point is that if every time drop off is stressful for you, then what can we do differently so that it's not stressful anymore? You know what I mean? And so figuring that out is where we create change. It's really those layers underneath. And so I think it's funny too, because if you think about it, like, and going back to like the generational piece of this, like how many times do you hear that someone like they married someone just like their mom or they married someone just like their dad or that pattern comes in and it's a lot of, in our childhood, we are craving what we missed or we have a lot of like beliefs around what we deserve, quote unquote, what we deserve. And so if we end up in a relationship that's not great for us, it's because we don't think we deserve better or, it's this learning process that we almost, and I see it now as an opportunity, right? So I know that like this person in my life that I now have to co-parent with is showing me where I'm falling short in ways that I could still learn and grow from. And so changing that dynamic with the relationship goes from labeling as a narcissist or labeling as a high conflict person or labeling as like, how can I make this more about me and what I'm able to control? And that means that, and if you think about it too, like I love to say like everything is energy, right? And so if everything has a vibration and you're dealing with someone who's on a lower vibration, right? And so if you think about the scale of consciousness, you're thinking about anger and fear and worry and all of those things are going to be down here on a lower level. And so if you're dealing with someone who's on a lower level, the best way to go about it isn't to come down to their level and to argue with them. The best way to go about it is to raise your vibration so that you're feeling grateful and happy and love and joy and all of those things so that it doesn't affect you as much, right? And so it doesn't really matter about them. What matters is you. And that's been the biggest takeaway that I've had so far is just knowing that the more I can focus on me, the less other things are going to impact me.
Yeah, I love it. Now, have you had to set some boundaries to get to this point? So, because I was going through your Instagram and you talk a lot about boundaries. So what has that looked like for you?
So I feel like with boundaries, okay, so to me, when I think about a boundary, I think about if you're like a little caterpillar crawling on the ground and there's a big apple that's in your way, right? And so you're walking and you see this huge apple and you're like, how am I going to get around this apple? This really sucks. There's this situation that I don't know how to figure it out and I don't know what to do. And so when you're feeling like this is a huge obstacle that's around you, how do I work through this? If I think about then moving through the process and really shifting into how can I become more of like the butterfly that is able to fly above and see things from all perspectives and really be more open to opportunities to see where I can hold boundaries and where I am able to kind of work through that. It's almost like the apple doesn't seem so big anymore, right? So the more that you're able to really focus and shift on that, the more boundaries feel like you're able to enforce them. Because I think that that's the biggest issue, right? People say, oh, I'm going to have boundaries, but it's like, how do I actually tangibly do that? Like, I would love to set boundaries, but then I still have to deal with this person all the time. And so I'm still going to worry about it, right? So it's always that perspective of like, then you're seeing this as a big obstacle that you have to do and you have to struggle through and you have to suffer. And I think that that's also a story that we play out, right? Is that, what would it look like if it was just easy for us to have boundaries and easy for us to enforce them? And so honestly, it just goes back to me and what feels good for me and following that intuitive guidance and understanding that sometimes that looks like stepping away. Sometimes that looks like not having expectations, because a lot of the time our expectations are what allow us to feel like we're let down. Right. And so knowing that Mother's Day is coming up and I'm not going to have the expectation of a phone call means that that's okay. And it's okay that she doesn't call because I am still surrounded by love with, from myself and from the family that I have here with me. And even though it doesn't look the same, it still allows me to not guard my heart, but protect it in a way that makes it so that I'm not so easily frustrated when situations come up that I could be let down by.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you've had to do a lot of work to deal with the parental alienation piece. And I know that a lot of stepmoms reach out to me and say, like, how do you deal with that? How do you focus on your relationship with your child or your stepchild when there's another party who's trying to interfere, or is putting thoughts in their head or not really encouraging that? What's your advice for them?
I would say, what are your goals? Like, what is most important to you? And what are the things that you would love to have? Like, what if your life was perfect, what would that look like? And then going back through and just asking, what would it take for me to get there today? What would it take for me to get there in this moment? And understanding that making it more realistic is what creates your awareness and the ability to make it happen. And so, at least for me, I know that my goal has shifted a lot from when I very first started co-parenting, right? So when I was in court and I was fighting for custody for my little girl, my goal was, in the moment, I was like, I want full custody. I don't want her dad to see her at all. He wasn't in her life for a year and a half. Like, I had an expectation that wasn't going to be realistic. And so then shifting that from, my goal then went to, well, I want to be able to live wherever I want. And I don't want the courts to have so much control over me. And so kind of watching that evolve, and then shifting that goal then to something that's actually realistic and just saying, I want the best relationship with my daughter, and affirming that and knowing that like it will happen in its own time. And what can I do? What would it take for me to have that today? And what does that look like? Does it look like sending her a letter in the mail? Does it look like, reaching out on like to her stepmom? Or what does it even just look like, keeping her in my thoughts and prayers? Like, there could be so many simple steps that we can take to allow us to achieve a goal that's realistic versus saying, I want XYZ and I'm going to fight you in court for it until that happens. Right. And so I think that really not managing expectations, but really having an awareness of what's best for you and like, that's self-care to me, right? Like, I think that being able to stand in that and allow yourself to be okay with whatever goes on around you, whatever the judgment is, whatever the expectation is that it should be a certain way, and just allowing you to be really completely happy authentically and allowing them to be completely happy authentically, and whatever that looks like is great.
And just them knowing that you're there.
Yeah.
Because I always say that kids are going to look back on their life with an adult perspective. And at that point, I look back on my parents' divorce and things that both of them would say about the other person, or just choices that they made. And I was like, what the hell? Like, that was not in our best interest at all. That was their ego, or that was their adult conflict coming in. That wasn't about what was best for me. And that wasn't about what was best for the kids. Sidebar, I always called my brothers and sisters the kids because they lived with my mom and I lived with my dad, and I'd be like, oh, the kids are coming on the weekend. But yeah. It's really easy to get caught up in that place. But now as an adult, I look at the whole situation completely different than I did as a kid. And I think parental alienation is super sad because it really, you lose out on that time that you can't ever get back. And it is really damaging, and it is abusive. It's straight up abusive. But I love your perspective on that, saying like, what do you want in the long run? Like, you just want them to know that you're always there. You just continue to be there and continue to let them know that you are holding that space for them, and that, when they're ready, you're ready to, right? Like, it's never changed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of that comes down to knowing who she is as a person and understanding those qualities that are unique and different to her than they are to all of my other kids, and really being able to meet those needs on an individual basis rather than just saying, like, well, I'm just going to be like, as far as like, if you think about like your love language, right? So you have a receiving love language, but you also have a giving love language. And so it might not be her love language to receive quality time with me, but her love language is gifts. And so I can send her gifts, and that to her is probably more meaningful than a conversation on the phone. And so being able to really understand that about her and truly give her that space to be a unique person and to meet those needs, and understand too, not only that, but she loves structure and she craves, schedule and routine. And me as a person, I am the opposite of that. And I love to just, I'm very spontaneous and fun. And I like to just have, things going on all the time. And so understanding too that there might be part of her other parents that give her that structure that she wants. And so it would naturally mean that she would be great to learn those things from them. And so then I am holding space for her to be that version of herself rather than forcing her to be what I want her to be, or for her to, it took me a while to realize this the hard way, because I would go and visit her and I'd be like, let's go to the beach, or let's go to Disney, or let's go to these fun things. And she's like, I just want to stay home. Like, I just want to be, I just want to lay on the couch and watch movies. And I felt like she was going to hate that type of vacation. But now I understand that when I'm with her, it's like she wants to have that time to re-energize and stay by herself for a little bit. And so I think knowing your children or your stepchildren is probably one of the most important things that I've done also to encourage a relationship with her no matter what, and allowing her to live fully in that and not forcing her to be somebody she's not.
Yeah. I did a podcast episode. It just came out a couple of weeks ago with Ron Deal, and how the 5 love language can improve your step family life and conflict and all of that. It was so good. And I think that we often will lose sight of other people's love language when we're in these high conflict situations, or when we're in more contentious situations, because we don't associate love languages with that. We think about our relationships or, our partners, whatever. Like, when it comes to blended families, it really is a game changer. I think that I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. I was going through, and we kind of started online around the same time-ish, I would say, where we kind of connected a few years ago. And so I was going through and I was noticing, I was like, you know what? Ashley's being a little quiet online right now. There's just not as many posts and that kind of stuff. And I want to bring that up because I do think that we're both fairly similar in, I guess, the ebbs and flows of sharing what's happening in life and our stories, and helping other people through their stuff based on our experiences, while also taking care of ourselves. And I'm just curious as to why. What's going on over there? What's going on your Instagram?
Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like sometimes for me, it's insecurity and self-sabotage, right? So I'll put myself out there and I'll share really vulnerably. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to just like shut all the doors and bar all the windows and hide myself away, because it's really scary to be in the step family space, not knowing how you'll be received for saying certain things. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying that that's my perception of it. So I don't think that people are more worried about themselves than they are worried about me, certainly, but it feels sometimes like a fear-based, like I just sometimes feel like I need to kind of take this step back, but also understanding that what that kind of evolves into is then the self-care and the healing that happens on the back end, so that when I am ready to share again, or when I am stepping out into this space again, it feels more aligned and authentic with not allowing some of that. I feel like it's totally me, but it just also feels like the dynamic between me and my daughter's stepmom is impacted when I share too. And so I know that like anytime I post something, I'm kind of in the back of my head worried, what is she going to say? Or, and this happens, I think, for a lot of people who decide to share any part of their story, there are always going to be people there who don't appreciate that. And so I'm learning how to navigate, how to share without necessarily giving so many vulnerable details that would, kind of impact them in a way to just be not even more respectful, but just to help others without sharing so much personally. And so kind of trying to figure out how to navigate that as well. But I feel like you do such a good job at that. So.
It's hard. I was just going to say it's hard. And I feel like sometimes I don't do that. I love what you said there, though. It's like you want to share your story and what you're going through without sharing or speaking on someone else's experience, and without insulting them or having them feel offended. And it's a really hard thing to do in the step family space, because I think that a lot of the challenges that come from being a stepmom, I'd say in my situation, is the co-parenting piece, or is dealing with stepkids and that kind of stuff. But what I've done in my situation is just to say, like, this isn't about you. This is about a community of women. This is about sharing how I feel and how I'm experiencing things. And the big thing I've learned is two different people can experience the exact same situation in two very different ways. Like, I bet I could sit down and do a podcast interview with your daughter's other parents and it would be a completely different interview, right? The same goes for, I could talk to my husband and I could talk to his ex, and there are two very different perspectives on what's right and wrong and what's gone down. And I think that's important for us all to recognize, right? And respect. Like, this is your experience. So that I do feel, though, like when you're vulnerable like this, it gets sometimes exhausting. Like, you have that, what is it, like a vulnerability hangover afterwards. You're like, oh, I don't know about that. But then it's the posts that you were like, oh, I don't know if I should have shared that do so well.
Yeah.
Because people are craving real life, right? Like they're scared to share their own journey too. So yeah, it's really interesting. What does self-care look like for you right now?
So right now it looks like sending my kids to summer camp
Hey,
and
preach.
giving them, I'm like, bye, have fun, and that's just what I need right now. I need some independence and space. And I feel like I've been in, and Nellie's too. We have a little baby who's still at home all the time, but delegating a lot of that, even just 2 hours a day to say, I need this time for myself and have some independence has been really important for me as a mom. And I don't think I realized how much I needed that until I didn't have it during COVID. And when my kids were around me all the time,
Yeah. I found COVID really hit me at the end, like at the very end, the tail last, I would say 3 months of just being with everyone all the time. And Reese has been in camp for the last 3 days.
Yeah.
And I just feel like a whole new woman. Like I literally, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this like a little bit of routine again? Is this what life is going to be like? Yeah. You talk a lot about clearing emotions. And what does that, I'm hearing that more and more. When you say that, what does that mean?
So for me, our emotions basically are imprinted on our cellular DNA. So this is just like, our emotions trigger experiences, and they're basically, it's like little pieces of awareness, right? So anytime we're feeling an emotion, it's not that we're clearing the emotion, we're clearing the experience behind it. So essentially what that means is, like, you could be in school on your first day, right? And you go into kindergarten and you're nervous, but you're excited, and you sit down and you raise your hand and you get an answer wrong. And your teacher's like, no, that's wrong. And so then that experience, then you're like, oh, what is this feeling? I've never felt this before. I didn't feel like that with my mom at home or whatever. And so that feeling of low self-worth, or not knowing the answer, or not having the answer to everything, then is imprinted on your subconscious. And so then we carry that throughout the rest of our lives. And so moving forward, then when we're adults or teenagers, we might be afraid to raise our hand or speak out in a public conversation or have something that we want to share with the world, but maybe we're too afraid to say it because back when we were 5 years old on our first day of kindergarten, this experience happened to us. So that emotion of low self-worth then stays with us, basically. And so clearing that means that like our body has an energy field around it. And so what that means is we have, I'm sure you've heard of chakras and auras and all of that. And so being able to go in, and it's basically like, if you think about it, you have five senses. It's just an extra sense where we hold emotions that protect us. And so our aura is there to basically say, when my energy is feeling unsafe, that's when our fight or flight mode is basically triggered. Okay. And so clearing that allows us to then see things for what they are without the clouded perception that we've held on to for such a long time, right? Because, that just because it happened in our past doesn't mean that that's what's going to continue to happen in our future. So when we put our guard up or when we have these emotions that come up, once we clear them, we're able to move forward with just a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. So how do you clear?
So for me, so at the end of every single day, I take a shower and I imagine that shower is like a white light coming down and clearing my aura as well. So not just like my physical body, but also my energetic body. And I watch as those things that came up throughout my day. And I do this with my kids too. So we pretend like my front door is a car wash. So like they'll go out the car wash in the morning and they get protected and, like all of this stuff around their aura so that things can bounce off of them and not feel like they're getting stuck in their energy field. But then also when they come back home, we just energetically wash that off. And so I think everyone feels energy on some level, but as a kid, I was always very like psychically in tune and very aware. And so it's been interesting to see as I open those gifts back up, how common it is. Like the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, people really, it resonates with them because they're like, oh, it's crazy because, I just had this bad feeling about this thing, or I kind of intuitively knew it before it happened or something, we all have aspects of this gift. And so being able to step into that and understand like, okay, well, when did I experience this for the first time? Where am I feeling that in my body? Because a lot of the time, there's a really great book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I love it because it explains like, if you have any neck tension or if you're having if you feel a pit in your stomach, and there are a lot of the time we don't recognize that that's a symptom as well, but knowing that energy can also be stuck in different parts of our body can give us that awareness too.
That is so good. I've been thinking a lot about energy lately, and when it comes to my own boundaries, that's where I'm very much paying attention to my energy and the vibe in my home. Like that's my two priorities. I just want to protect myself so that I can keep that vibe in the home to be that safe and welcoming space. And it's so crazy how certain people or certain events can affect your energy so quickly. Yeah. Like I was even today, I had a conversation on a phone or I received a text and it was not what I needed today. And it immediately affected my energy. It immediately triggered me. And in my head, I'm like, you know what? I have to find a way to protect myself from these conversations. They don't get open access to me. Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that when we're dealing with an ex or we're dealing with just like anyone in our family or people in our lives. Why do we give everyone such open access to us? Like they can get a hold of us and potentially hijack our day by just a text message that pops up on our phone that's right beside us all the time. Right. Like we're basically kind of like opening ourselves up to be attacked or to be triggered. And just setting my boundaries around that protection mindset is so good. So I love that whole clearing piece. I guess I've always been doing that and understand it, but I just had never really worded it that way.
Well, and there are a lot of different things that you can do, a lot of different tools that you can use. But one of my other favorites is if you're sitting down and you're like, you get the text where someone sends something to you and you're really frustrated, or this might not even be real time. It could just be something that you realize that you're really still upset about something that maybe happened in the past. One of the things that I like to do is just sit down in a room by myself and just close my eyes and connect into the energy of that person and imagine that I'm having a conversation with them without them actually being there. So I'm telling them all of the things that I'm mad about and all of the things that I'm angry about and all of the things that they did that upset me, and just releasing it and just letting it go. Because sometimes what happens is we don't ever clear that, not even just the energy, but like, it's almost like we feel like we have to hold on to those things to be right or to be validated or to be, like it's almost like not a badge of honor, but it's almost like justifying our behavior, knowing that they did something wrong to us first, instead of just
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know what, like I'm really angry at all of these things and I'm going to tell you about them, but then I'm going to let it go and I'm just going to release it and allow it to be what it is and just seeing how the energy shifts after that. And it's funny because I will tell people to do this and they'll like say it's crazy because now we don't fight about these things, or they'll get a call right after from their ex and it's like goes really smoothly. And I'm like, it's because on an energy level, your aura is still able to communicate that. And it's like on some level, they receive that. They receive that you've released it and that you're no longer allowing them to have that control over you anymore.
It sounds so kooky, but it's so true. It's
I
right.
know. I'm like, if it didn't work, I wouldn't tell you about it.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. Where can everyone find you?
On Instagram at Ashley Machele, or my website's ashleymichele.com. So
yeah. P.S. Your reels are freaking hilarious.
Oh, thank you.
So good. Yeah, you definitely look like you're having fun with it, and the messages are great too. So thank you so much for coming on, and everyone go check out Ashley.
Thank you so much.
That's it for this one, guys. I am so happy that you took time to join and have these important conversations. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so that you get updated when new episodes are released. And if you are craving more and you're looking for personalized support and connection, be sure to check out the exclusive Stepmom community. Not only can you get individualized support from me in the Ask Jamie section of the forum, but you can connect with stepmoms from 30 plus countries around the world and have access to content that I don't share anywhere else. www.jamiescrimshaw.com/membership. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll chat with you next week.